Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome back to Monday after that beautiful, beautiful four-day holiday weekend. We hope you had a fantastic Turkey Day. And what a beautiful time. I enjoyed Turkey Day so much, we had it twice. That's right. We had 2 Turkey Days around my house. It was fantastic. And I just can't tell you how good it felt. Yesterday was normally Sundays, a little tense around the old house as I'm trying to think about everything that has to be done the following week and everything else. But man, I was just relaxed. It was just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I hope you had a great Turkey Day. I hope some of you took some of the recipes that were posted up on our holiday recipe contest, which if you haven't taken a look at yet or posted to, is available up on our Facebook page right now. You can go over there to facebook.com/Michael Dukes Show, and you can post your favorite holiday recipe, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, and share it with all the other listeners. And then if you go through there and you find some recipes you like, you can give them the thumbs up, which is officially... It's how we count voting for the recipe. Or you can love it, or you can thumbs up it, or whatever. And whoever gets the most interactions with their recipe is going to win a delicious bag of Beard Curler coffee, my own personal blend, and a 6 o'clock club coffee mug. You're all members of the 6 o'clock club, by the way, right now. If you didn't know that, but just by listening to the show in the 6 o'clock hour, you're officially a member of the 6 o'clock club. So it's it's great bragging rights around the office or around the old homestead when you're drinking the Beard Curler straight out of the beard mug from the 6 o'clock club. And so whoever gets the most interactions will win that mug. The ulterior motive for this promotion, by the way, is so that I can get all of your great holiday recipes into my own cookbook. That's what I want to do, into my own recipe box, which I have done over the years. We've done this contest several years over the last 10 years or so. And it is just a great way to share some of your greatest family joy, some of your greatest family recipes, things that you've enjoyed, and be able to share that with other people. And in fact, we revisited the oyster stuffing recipe on our second Turkey Day this year, which is like a cornbread and oyster. It's so good. It's so good. It's rich. Oh, it's so rich, but it's so good as well. And we just had a great time. So feel free to go over again to facebook.com/Michael Dukes Show and post up your favorite family recipe. I've got my grandma's pumpkin pie in there. I noted that my daughter put up one of her favorite new recipes that she discovered here just a few years ago. And it's become a family tradition already, and that is the eggnog snickerdoodle cookies. I know Bill has put up his bourbon caramel popcorn, which was getting a lot of votes because, well, caramel popcorn. Why couldn't it not? Or anything else. But again, the whole reason here is to share the joy of the season, especially some of those old family recipes that have been floating around for years. And since we're not doing any county fairs or anything, feel free to share those recipes out there. I know a lot of grandmas were like, I'll give you this recipe, but don't you dare ever give it to anyone else because I don't know. Apparently, I made a comment about this last week, and then somebody sent me an email about, well, my grandma didn't want to ever share recipes because she'd use them in the county fair, and it would give other people unfair advantages if they knew this recipe from. And I'm just like, okay, I guess but it's not a. Anyway, feel free to share. Just feel free to share. Don't let those old-fashioned recipes get just sharing is caring is what I'm saying. Sharing is caring, and it just doesn't make any sense to let those recipes go and not share the love a little bit. It is it's good. Yeah, it's so anyway, go over there and head out and doing the go out there and do the thing and enjoy a little sharing of all the stuff that's going on out there for the holidays. Because I mean, it's it's all about food. Now, like I said, we ended up having two Thanksgivings. We got started. We were all ready for Thanksgiving Day, and we were getting things scored away. And one of my daughters, who'd been doing a lot of the cooking, and my wife, they both went down with they weren't feeling good, and so by the time and then my turkey roaster. How you're supposed to, you do a hot for most turkeys, and for those of you who are not cooking your own turkeys, some of the thing, you're supposed to you cook it at a hot temperature for an hour, then you turn the temperature down, and then you let it percolate over a while. Well, I got everything up. It was a butterball, fresh young. It was great. I got it basted. I got the butter. I got the seasonings on it. I got the stuffing in it. Did all that kind of stuff. And put it in the roaster. Roaster was up to temperature. Everything was good. Set the timer for the first 1 hour thing, and then I wander off to go do something. And I come back down an hour later, and the roaster is just warm. That's all. It's just warm. It's not even. And I reach over, and it has popped the it's popped the fuse on the power strip that I had it plugged into, because I was doing it on the dining room table. And so it just threw me into a tailspin of like, how long did it actually cook? How could you, anyway, so we got that cooked up, and I finally got it. It was good. It was a little drier than I like, but by the time we actually sat down, there was only 4 of us instead of 6 of us. And so we decided, since everybody with my son visiting and everything, that we needed to do it again. So we redid the whole thing again on Saturday, and we had a second Thanksgiving. I actually went out and bought another turkey and had a second Thanksgiving, and got to redo, had some of the leftovers and cooked up a couple extra side dishes, which is where the oyster stuffing came in. And so it was so nice, we had to do it twice. That was the way to do it. But it just, what a great time. What a great time. Totally unplugged, no news, no nothing, no digging down into the headlines of, who's doing what to whom or who's upset about whatever. And it was just a fantastic, fantastic weekend overall. And it was great stuff. Okay. So, hi, how are you? How's things going? How are you guys doing? How are you doing on your post Thanksgiving weekend? I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but only 28 days left till Christmas. And so I'm hoping that a lot of you, and my wife and I were reviewing what we'd already done over the holidays, or, prior to the Thanksgiving, what we'd already done as far as Christmas gifts and all this other kind of stuff. And, just making sure, because the time will go like that. I mean, it'll just boom. That's, you'll go from one to the other. And so hopefully you got all your Christmas stuff done and you're ready to go, which reminds me, as we go through here, that I will be going on vacation starting on the 21st of December. I'm actually on vacation the 20th, but I decided to get up with you guys that one final morning to announce the winner of the recipe contest and to have what has traditionally become the greatest Christmas memory show. Every year we just do Christmas memories on the final day of the show for the year, which is what that will be. The final day of the show for this year will be December 20th. And where we just hang out and we talk about things. And, I wish we used to do Christmas music on the show, but because of the simulcast, we can't use copyrighted Christmas music like we can on the radio. It's a thing. But so that will be the 20th of December will be the final show of the year. So just over 3 weeks from today. So it'll be great. So what's coming up on today's show? I guess I should have got, that was that was long-winded, but fun. Coming up on today's show, it's going to be you and me, some headlines from around the state. We'll talk about some of the things that really, surprisingly, I went back and I looked because again, I didn't even look at the websites or the news media for like 4 whole days. And there really wasn't anything that was definitely, it was some interesting stuff. There was just not a lot going on. Anyway, we'll go over what there is. There is a few stories there and some interesting stuff. Maybe a little bit of commentary on Alaska overall, like weird. That's some weird stuff. And then in hour 2, we're going to talk with David Haeg. Now, you'll remember we had David on the program here a while ago. He is with the Alaska Grand Jurors Association, and he's been basically battling it out with the Alaska judicial system for quite a while. And the most recent discussion has been about the this case with the judicial investigator, former arbitrator, former judge, and how they are working on right now the Alaska grand jury. One of the grand juries that had been going to investigate some judicial corruption issues was arbitrarily shut down by one of the judges down in the Kenai, and that led and triggered a court case, which led to one of the judicial investigators being put on trial. And we're going to get the full rundown. We talked about this probably 6-8 months ago, and it has continued to percolate through the system. So we'll see exactly what's happening here. We're going to talk with David Haeg in hour 2. He's going to be giving a presentation he's going to be giving a presentation tonight at the Matsu School of Government at Real Life Church in the Palmer-Wasilla area, 7 p.m. tonight. So they're going to be doing that. Meanwhile, we will talk with David Haeg this morning to discuss and get all the details on that. So, there's a lot going on for that, huh? That's a lot. All right, well, let's proceed ahead. Welcome to it. It's a week. It's a Monday, but it's going to be a great week for you and yours. I just know it in my bones. It's going to be a great week. The Michael Luke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Well, hello. Hello, my friends. Hello. How are you doing? It is it's just another beautiful day in paradise, and we're ready to go. I'm drinking my chemically induced caffeine booster. Didn't have time for coffee this morning. It's delicious. So how'd you guys do? How was your weekend? I haven't looked into Brian's got a smoked bourbon cheese recipe up on the thing. Oh, did I miss it? Wow. Did I miss it? Wow. Oh. Okay. What's going on? Good morning. Anthony says, talking about my roaster. That probably means you either need a new roaster or a new breaker, my dude. One of the two is not working properly. Yeah, no, I can tell you right now that it's the roaster. When you have teenage boys putting stuff away and the roaster is this nice, beautiful unit, but it's got a big knob on the front and somebody smashes it against the side of the shelf when they're putting it away and bends the whole unit out of shape, and you have to go back in and gently bend everything back into shape, I can tell you it's probably the roaster. But I mean, this is a big 18-quart Nesco roaster. This is not something you just throw away and, whatever. Did on it. What's going on in there? Why is it not? It was fine and it works fine, but after you run it for quite a while, it definitely has some issues. So anyway, Barbara said her turkey this year was smoked. I tried to smoke a turkey one time. The damn thing was so hard to get lit, and the inhale. Oh man, it was horrible. Anyway, it was great stuff. Good morning. Good luck, Michael. Santa and Mrs. Claus are coming out for the dog sled rides today. Nice. Michael King up in Fairbanks runs a dog sled ride thing. Good for you, my friend. Take some pictures. Post that stuff up to Facebook. Let us know. All right. Jeannie says, my eyeballs popped open at 04:30 this morning. My eyeballs were still awake at 00:30, double dark 30. Looked over at my clock and I'm laying there in bed I'm just like, I just don't feel that tired. And it's 12:30 in the morning and I'm like, I've got to get up in 4 hours. And just one of those things. You just, Brian says, there's always time for coffee. The rapture comes, we're stopping for coffee. This morning, it was a little bit different for me. Oh, man. I was blessed enough to have 2 Thanksgiving dinners. Neither dinners did I have to cook, said Melody. Oh, man. Yeah. All the favorite recipes, Donna makes a comment, all the favorite recipes on the recipe contest seem to have bourbon in common. She had a Kentucky Blue Ribbon bourbon pecan pie. That was last winter. Bill is up there in the top with the bourbon caramel popcorn. And now apparently the bourbon smoked cheese thing going on. It, I don't know. Maybe the bourbon is a common theme. I don't know. All right. Apple hickory on the Trevor grill. I think she meant Traeger grill, but I get the point. It's good stuff, Barbara. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, let's get back to it, shall we? The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's proceed ahead and do our thing. Okay. Well, are you ready? Are you ready? Let's jump into some headlines, shall we? See where we got to go. It's the unusual weather continues. There is a warning for the entire South Central area, starting all the way up in the Susitna Valley through Matsu down to Anchorage for black ice for the next couple days. I mean, there was no snow, then there was way too much snow, and then it got warm, then it got freezing cold below zero, like 9 below, and then it warmed back up. And then for the last 3 days, it's been raining here at the house, raining and snowing, mostly rain. And that has led to a black ice warning throughout the South Central area, Anchorage and the Valley and everything else. It is a whopping 38 degrees or something here at the house this morning when I got up. What is it now? Is it still 38 degrees? It's come on, where is it right there? 36 degrees, I guess. 36 degrees at the house here. So, I mean, it's nice. Not making the driving so nice, though. And this weather is predicted to continue on and off. I mean, it's like snow and then warm and then snow and then cold. And then welcome to winter. Welcome to Alaska. If you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes. It was, we just wait a few minutes. It'll be crazy. But we're seeing that going on into Christmas right here. At least it hasn't been too bad. But who knows? I told my wife, I said, just imagine if it all melts away towards Christmas and then we get another dump at Christmas. That could be the new way, right? On top of that, we're getting a bit of craziness. This is not happening in many other places in Alaska, but here in South Central, in the Matsu, we've had a couple. I don't know if it's like a full moon, if it's just the turning of the tides or what. It's definitely not Friday the 13th. But we had a bunch of, here in the Wasilla area, there was a couple murder-suicides in the last 10 days, 8, 9, 10 days. And down in Anchorage, there have been 4 shootings in the last week, all of which resulted in at least 1 fatality. Early Saturday morning, Anchorage police and first responders went to a Spenard neighborhood just south of Benson Drive, where one man was found with a gunshot wounds, dead, and another was taken to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, and a third went to the hospital on his own. They said it's a isolated incident and not random. On November 22nd, an officer discharged his weapon at an agitated man who was walking on the road waving a machete. The man brandished another firearm pointed at the officer, and the officer shot him. Then there was the murder-suicide in the parking lot of Walmart on the 21st. And then in the 19th, people were called over to McGraw Street in North Thompson, where an adult male was taken to the hospital where he died from a gunshot wound there. It's just like, I mean, I don't know if it's in the water, if it's in the weather. What is going on? I mean, this is supposed to be a time of joy and happiness and holiday feelings and cheer. And it just seems like there's some weirdness going on around here. And I told my wife, I said, I blame the internet. I had to blame something. I didn't know what else to blame, but it is just like, what is going on with all this craziness happening out there? Now, again, none of these appeared to be like a random somebody going crazy thing. This is normally where I would interject with my normal, this is another reason to go forth armed comment, which, I mean, it is, but at the same time, these seem to be all individual interactions with people who knew each other. So it may not necessarily be a thing, but man, it's gotten real. I mean, they call it Los Anchorage for a reason, but it's not just Anchorage. The Matsu's happening as well. And we've seen stuff like this go on down in the Kenai and up in Fairbanks. And we're getting into a world that's just a little bit more uncertain than the world that I grew up in. Maybe I had a different kind of uncertainty, right? I mean, I wasn't from the duck and cover era, but it was close. I mean, it was the 80s and, the evil empire and the threat of the Soviet Union and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there was a little bit of a thing hanging over our heads. Maybe this is just different. Maybe every generation goes through just a different type of issue in that regard. But it just seems like it's a little more crazy out there, a little more tense. My wife and I were having a conversation yesterday about, what is with the incidence of more and more people, the ADD, the ADHD, all the attention deficits issues, the heightened anxiety. There are more people now with anxiety disorders than ever before. Is it a factor of just the world we live in the speed at which we're consuming information? Is it the fact that we're inundated with commercial messages and things day in and day out from our phones and from the computers and the televisions? And I mean, is it a factor of that or what? I don't have any answers. We pontificated, to our heart's content for a while there, but no real answers as to what was going on. But it definitely is a little bit different today than it was when we were growing up. And I just realized how old that made me sound. That made me sound like back in my day, it was a whole different. But I mean, I guess every generation experiences that disconnect between how it was when they were growing up and how the new generation are dealing with things. But I would just say it's not necessarily progressing in always a positive situation. But remember, as Chris Story would tell us, there is only the only people in charge of how we react to things. And the only thing we can control is our reaction to things. The only people in charge of that are us. That's what's going on. So, deal with it. We'll have to, we have to work through it and figure it out. But yeah, some of the headlines definitely interesting to say the least. But Los Anchorage going on. Now, remember we interviewed a gentleman here, what was that? Must have been 3-4 months ago about the nuclear salt battery. That was an interesting interview. I really enjoyed that. And it was a good discussion about the future of micronuclear technology and everything else. And he went on to talk about some of the things that were going on with the contract at Eielson and how things and all that was the next big thing, was contracting for a small nuclear power plant at Eielson. Well, apparently the U.S. military has quietly revoked its plan to contract for a small micronuclear reactor at Eielson Air Force Base in Fairbanks. They rescinded the preliminary award of what would have been a 9-figure contract with a company that it had tentatively selected to build that small-scale plant at Eielson. This is from Nat Hers over at the Northern Journal. The Department of the Air Force and the Defense Logistics Agency in August announced an intent to award the contract to Oklo, which is a Silicon Valley startup. In late September, the Defense Logistics Agency's energy arm revoked its decision, citing a need for further consideration of its obligations under a specific military contracting regulation, according to a memo sent to a competing bidder and obtained by Northern Journal from another source. The regulation says the military should engage in post-bidding negotiations and discussions for contracts that were worth more than $100 million. So what this sounds like is not necessarily not an interest, excuse me, a lack of interest in micronuclear technology. This sounds like a pissing match between some companies, because what it comes down to is that the revocation basically said that all bidders that responded to the agency's request for proposals are still under consideration. But apparently there was some violation, or, basically somebody complained is essentially what it comes down to. Somebody made a complaint back to the Defense Logistic Agency, that they hadn't followed their own contracting procedures when they awarded Oklo, the contract. So, I mean, as you read through this, you're like, okay, what's going on there? What's going on? The Eielson contract drew broad interest from the energy industry, including officials from companies like Westinghouse, Rolls-Royce, and Siemens participated in an informal meeting about it last year, according to the roster published by the military. Experts, of course, say that microreactors could be a good match to replace generators running on expensive imported diesel in remote Alaskan communities, not to mention how good it would be for the military. So we'll see exactly what's going on here. But again, it seems like the basically a pre-filing notice of protest of the award to Oklo was submitted to the U.S. Court of Federal Claims, but nobody's seen a copy of it. So apparently somebody protested the fact that Oklo got the contract. It wasn't, again, not that there wasn't any interest in it, not that it couldn't be a good thing, but that it was, again, this is all about paperwork and the contracting process and everything else. So we'll see what goes on with this. But again, this is a fascinating concept. We had that conversation here a few months ago over this. And I think this would be a good thing to revisit this month. I'm kind of excited about revisiting it this month and talking about it some more. The Air Force said the microreactor was expected to go online. This is what they said back in August, by the end of 2027, based on a directive in Congress's 2019 military spending bill. They said there's no revised timeline to the contracting process, and the agency still intends to meet its deadlines. So we'll see what's going. But it's always something. I remember we first started talking. Was it the Mitsubishi battery when they talked about that? Gosh, that's been going on close to 20 years ago now, right? Because I've been here for 10, and I know it was probably 5 to 10 prior to that. So this has been going on for a while, but we'll see what happens. Maybe one day we'll be able to really start to responsibly develop micronuclear technology, which quite honestly is what we should be doing, because there was a whole thing. I mean, Ken Ross, there was where's that story? There was a story that that was talking about the cost of development and everything else. And it was quoting Ken Ross and somebody else talking about how everything that they do in Alaska is more expensive than any place else. And it really doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the logistics. It's all about the energy. Remember, cheap energy is the driver behind most of, civilization, modern civilization. The fact that we have relatively cheap, affordable energy to be able to do a lot of this stuff makes a thing. And here in Alaska, it's not cheap. It's not cheap. So a modern, safe, effective micronuclear solution would be great. Would be absolutely great. All right. Hey, we're up against the break already again. So I guess we'll go do our thing. And we'll be back. Well, we'll make it happen. All right. It was Toshiba, not Mitsubishi. Thank you, Brian. That was a Toshiba nuclear battery. You were correct. All right. Back with more of the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll see you on the other side. Again, David Haeg talking about the grand jury will be up at the top of the hour.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Good morning. Let's see. What are you guys talking about? Scrolling backwards here. All right. 34 degrees down in the peninsula, 11 degrees in North Pole, 39 degrees on the Willow side of Hatcher Pass, 40 degrees. That's not bad. 13 in Fairbanks, 34 at the Kenai Airport. Everybody's reporting what's going on. 30 years of you boomers running the show. Ooh, who's a boomer? I don't know if there's many boomers in here. You'd have to be substantially older than me to be a boomer. All of these disorders are caused by diet. You know, Jeannie, Terry and I were talking about that this weekend. We were talking about how gut health is a big deal and it has to do even down to behavioral issues. We were talking about one of our daughters was having, this is 10 years ago or whatever. She was having, in her teenage years, she was having these angry outbursts. And we were trying to figure out what was going on and why she was feeling it. And one of the doctors had recommended probiotics, and which Terry was like, what? Anyway, it worked. We remember she started getting probiotics and that stuff went away. It's interesting because, you literally are what you eat. And here in the household, we've been moving slowly with the exception of the holidays. I will say that there's a holiday exception for this. But in our day-to-day eating, we're eating more unprocessed keto, kind of thing. And it makes you feel a lot better. It makes you feel better. It seems to clarify things a little bit. It takes a lot. There's a whole thing about that. Maybe we should do a show on that. Maybe we should do a show on, a gut check show where you're checking everything out. Because again, all this processed food and everything else, which is convenient, don't get me wrong, and we've all been subject to it at one point or another, but it's not as good. It's not as good. My breakfast for the last 6 months has consisted of, a little meat, a little cheese, a little egg, a little bit of, just a little bit, just real clean. No, I don't have any carbs. There's no breads in it and things like that. And it really makes my day. It fills me up for the day and takes me on. It's been interesting. I made a conscious decision about that. Sometimes I have an egg cooked, kind of thing. But yeah, it is. It's interesting to watch, and I feel better, and lost a little weight. But overall, it's how I feel that is really gone. We should have a show on that, shouldn't we? Should we take a vote? Should we do a show on gut health and what it means that everything comes from your gut? I'm starting to really believe that. I'm really starting to believe that more and more of what we put in affects so much, so many other things. That again, when we went back to the ADHD thing, we were talking about that. Insulin resistance is the insidious pathology. Yes, I mean that's again, great. Okay. Okay. Macronuclear. Murky used that nuke as part of her platform. Yeah, she's quoted in this article as well. Okay. COVID shots, yada, yada, yada. More people die from insulin-resistant related disease that will die from random or not so random viruses. Yeah, insulin resistance is definitely on the rise. I'm going for it here. I am pro micronuclear, says Jeannie. Me too. Donna says she's a boomer. She's a baby boomer. She can't be that much older than I am. I'm Gen X. I'm not a boomer. I'm Gen X. So I'm the child of a boomer. But me, says Brian, you're a boomer, I'm told. It can't be, Brian, because I think you're about my age, aren't you? I'm 53. 52, 53. 53. 50. I'm 53. No, hell, I'm 54. Dang it. Anyway, I'm Gen X. I'm not a boomer. Mm-hmm. Okay. Last year of the boomers. Thank you, Chris, for clarifying. Last year of the boomers is 1964. So I missed that by a few years. So there you go. Okay. Look out, MD. Big Sugar's going to put you on a list. I know I'm on a list. Probably what the, thing. Oh, Brussels sprouts. Eat Brussels sprouts and swim them out. I did have Brussels sprouts with a little bit of bacon chunks that we cooked together. I love Brussels sprouts. I know most people don't. I don't know why. I think they're delicious. Brussels sprouts and broccoli. We had some spinach stuff. Oh, it was so delicious. Here we go. Okay. Man, we traveled far afield during that commercial break. We went all the way back to the storytelling days. Somebody said something about it's all you boomers who are to blame for all the problems in the world, which is a typical Gen Z response, millennial response, I guess. But I'm not a boomer, which I thought was weird. And then I said, I said, I can't imagine there's a lot of boomers in the thing. And then Chris in the chat room made a point of mentioning that the cutoff for being a boomer is 1964. So I guess there are a few of you out there, but I don't blame you. Again, I'm Gen X. We're kind of that forgotten generation that nobody really talks much about unless it's as a warning to other generations. Unless it's as a warning. Let this be a warning to you. Those Gen Xers are crazy. Anyway, I think it's funny where everybody is, blaming what? Oh, it's the damn millennials. Oh, it's those millennials. Oh, it's the boomers. Oh, it's the you guys. Can we all just get along? To quote the philosopher Rodney King, can we all just get along? I mean, seriously, can't we just pull together instead of pointing fingers at each other and saying you're the problem? Probably not, because that's human nature, but gosh, I wish it would. Oh man. So good. Then we got talking about food, and I mentioned Brussels sprouts, which are delicious, cooked a variety of. One of my favorite things to do was to take Brussels sprouts and roast them in the oven, tossed lightly in oil with some sea salt and some cracked pepper, and then you roast them in a roasting pan under the broiler, and you quarter them up so that they're so good. Like me some Brussels sprout. I don't know why. It's delicious. Okay, what else? Sorry, I got off in the weird thing. What were we talking about? Oh, micronuclear. Yeah, I think we should have another show on that. Oh, we were also talking about gut health during the commercial break, where being, you are what you eat kind of thing, which was ironic as I was drinking a Monster energy drink. But, hey, do as I say, not as I do. I can be as hypocritical as I want to be. But I thought maybe we should do a show because December we're going to be focusing. We're going to be focusing more on some slice of life stuff because I want to kind of focus on some different things, non-political, so to speak. Because coming in January, it's going to be nothing but wall-to-wall Alaska legislative state business. It's coming. The first 3 months of the year are going to be just huckledybuck, just nothing but political stuff the entire time. So I'm working on some other guests as far as we're going to be talking about authors, some lifestyle stuff, but I think we should do an interview about this idea of gut health. Have any of you been watching some of these things? Terry continues to send me short videos and reels. We've been talking about this amongst ourselves in our own household for the last the last 6 months or so. We've been talking about, how we eat and what it does and how does it affect us. And, there's a lot of people now that have allergies and gluten and all this kind of stuff. And, you try and pick through all the various different ideologies, I suppose, and you try and find one, you test them out and see how do you feel. And I was commenting that I've changed my eating habits in the morning to where I actually didn't used to eat breakfast at all for many years, just because once I was up and running, I didn't, but now I've been eating breakfast in the mornings, and it's some protein, it's some meat, it's a little bit of cheese. It might be a little piece of fruit or something like that, where I'm, having this little plate of food, and but it's very clean. It's not processed. It's not a toast. It's not a Pop-Tart. It's not a nuclear breakfast burrito. It's not, whatever. And I definitely feel a difference. I feel a difference in my energy. We've been talking about this idea of, you are what you eat. And I do give us a bit of a pass on the holidays because you're going to eat you can eat pie, you're going to eat cookies, you cannot take anybody who tries to stick through a diet during the holidays. God bless you. Good. But that's just nearly an impossibility for me because I want that comfort of friends and family and people together and the enjoyment of the food. And so I just give late November through December gets a pass. I just throw that out the window. We'll start again in January. But again, this idea of you are what you eat is a very interesting concept. And I think we could talk about that So I'm looking for some other suggestions if you want to do non-political stuff for December. I want to have some fun with it. I want to enjoy some different discussions and talks about lifestyles and just health and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's going to be a good discussion. We were just talking about micronuclear, so I'm done with that one. The other interesting thing, this one comes from the Matsu and is very appropriate and relevant to what we've got going on right now. Matsu borough officials have now sent out more than 150 warning letters to residents accused of violating a rule that blocks homeowners from pushing snow from private property into public roads. Because that was one of the big complaints last year when we had so much snow. Now, I don't know where we're at this year as far as, because I know we've gotten at least 50 to 60% of a normal snowfall already. That's the amount of snow. But last year was so huge. And part of the problem, said according to contractors and maintenance contractors, was the fact that people were just basically plowing the snow from their driveway right out into the road and letting the contractors pick it up. But that is actually not legal. It's a problem called homeowner snow. And 5 of the 6 road maintenance contractors in charge of clearing neighborhoods submitted an additional set of invoices totaling over $7 million for last year's snowfall, which they still haven't been paid on. Most of them are still the borough. They're still legally battling it out with the borough while they're still plowing for this year's snow. Anyway, the infraction letters were sent out immediately after that major storm here from a couple weeks ago and dumped all that heavy, wet snow. Under the borough policy, homeowners who are documented as pushing snow out of their yards and into the roads are sent 2 warning letters before receiving an official citation, which carries a fine of $150. Violators are reported by plow operators, borough inspectors, and residents using an online problem reporter. And then the borough code violations are processed through the Alaska court system. It's an expensive process. Notices cost roughly $8 per letter under borough law. But it's part of the problem. And I've seen it happen in my neighborhood where people literally push the snow out onto the road. What I do have a problem with, I will say this is a personal pet peeve, is where, like, I have a neighbor who owns property on both sides of the road. His house is on one side. He's got an empty lot that goes downhill on the other. And he pushes his snow with his plow off his driveway, across the road, onto his other lot, and pushes it down the hill. So he's actually clearing snow off the road from his place off the road. And he got threatened with getting, if you do that again, you can't cross the road with it. He owns property on both sides of the road. He's not leaving it on the road. He's literally pushing snow off the road across there's got to be some common sense here, right? There's got to be a balance here. He's not leaving snow on the road. He's actually taking snow off the road and making your job easier so that you don't have to. Sometimes these people can be a little irate, but this is the first time that they have really gone over this. And apparently Anchorage has got another huge problem with this as well, where they're pushing snow out into the roads. And, you got to put some, here's what I laugh about. The borough then pushes that snow, because I live at the end of a cul-de-sac. They're pushing all the snow that they tell me not to put. They're pushing it onto my yard. I've got an edge of my yard is over on the edge of the road, and they put a pile of snow last year that was the size of a semi truck on the edge of my property, like on my property. I know it's in the right of way, but you're bitching about me shoveling they're not complaining about me because I don't do it, but I'm going to throw a little snow, yet you're going to put this 6-ton pile of snow on my yard. I mean, everybody's got a problem, right? Everybody's got to complain about something. All right, David Haeg is going to be joining us for hour 2. We're going to talk about grand juries. We're going to continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Oh, the new field of diet practice is called functional nutrition. Nice. See what I can find out on that. Carnivore is the new keto paleo, says Jeannie. Mike says, when they stop leaving a berm at the end of my driveway, I'll listen better. That is true. I mean, I can understand you're not, you don't have to come necessarily plow, but you don't have to leave a 2-foot berm that can't be moved with shovels at the end of the driveway, right? I've seen that happen. Like, what the heck is going on? You just, Donna says, I eat clean and no carbs, and I exercise. Doc, everything's slow. Doc says that my pulse and blood pressure are in the top 5% of my age. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think the processed part is what gets us, right? I mean, that's the processed part is what gets you going on. Is just the things that they put in there. It makes it convenient, makes it easy, but I don't think it's helping us. I don't think it's helping us much. Jim says, I love to throw Brussels sprouts into the fire and watch them burn into ash. I'm doing everyone a favor. Look, if you were talking about kale, I could be in agreement with you. But Brussels sprouts are. Tasty. Brussels sprouts and bacon. Oh, yeah, that'd be good. Balsamic, yeah, throw that on there too. That sounds delicious. Little olive oil, lightly salted pepper, and sprinkled in grated cheese. Brussels sprouts and grated cheese. I never did that. That sounds interesting. Okay, I mean, we're back to everyone is a boomer. Everyone here was telling me about how they're a boomer. Okay. I would love to participate, said Jeannie, in talking about the whole I guess Jeannie said she would love to participate, and I'm assuming that's talking about the healthy stuff. The functional nutrition. Okay. Wow, check your blood pressure. Why am I checking my blood pressure? Okay. That's it. We're all squared away. It's still raining here, said Jeannie. Yeah, it still was raining here this morning. It's 36 degrees or whatever it is. And then you can't see around the berms that they push up on your property. You can't see if cars are coming. I mean, look, this is hashtag Alaskan problems, right? I mean, this is the whole issue going on right now. These are all Alaskan problems. I see David Haeg. I saw him in the green room there. Now I don't have any video, but I see his little square there. So we'll check in with him here in just a second. Whoops, he just left. I love kale, said Jim. That just shows that there's something. You don't like Brussels sprouts, but you like kale. I've got a great kale recipe. Throw kale in a pan with some garlic and some butter, and then throw the entire pan away. That is my recipe for, oh, man. All right. So I see David Haeg is popping back into the chat room or the green room right now. I think he's there. Let's go in and check with David here before he disappears again. We don't want to lose him again. And we'll see what he has to say. We'll check in to make sure his audio is working and everything else. And we'll go over right now, see if he's there. I'm going to have to refresh the page before we start interviewing with David because this thing is going slow as hell. Good morning, David. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me or how?
No, you sound great. You sound great. You look great. Everything's good. Ready to start this discussion. So we're going to be talking about your presentation tonight at the School of Government there in the Matsu, and we'll get an update on what's been happening since the last time we had you on, which was probably 8 months ago, maybe we had you on to discuss this. So we'll get an update since the court case has proceeded and the judge has been censured, prosecuted, whatever you can give me all the pertinent details here, but we'll be doing that. We'll be doing that here in a minute. So if you're good to go, we'll be good to go with you in just a second.
Okay. I'll not touch my camera. The last time I did it blipped off.
Nope, You're doing fine. Just hold the line. I'm going to remove you from the screen, and the screen's going to go blue for everybody here for just a second as we get ready to go. We're going to jump into it here. Hour 2 is dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the stuff. Let's get to it. Here we go. I'm going to refresh during the break here. Here we go.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. It is the Michael Dukes Show, broadcasting live on this beautiful post-Thanksgiving week. I hope you had a great and enjoyable weekend. I hope you had a good one. Hope you feel rejuvenated, refreshed, and ready to face the holiday blitz that's about to happen, my friends. The holiday blitz. We are less than 30 days away from Christmas. And, of course, that's a reminder real quick that, of course, our holiday recipe contest is up and available right now on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Michael Dukes Show. Post your favorite holiday recipe, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year, up on that. Tell your friends to go out and thumbs up it, give it a thumbs up, a like, a love. And the person with the most interactions on their recipe is going to win a delicious bag of Beard Curler coffee and a 6 o'clock coffee mug, a 6 o'clock club coffee mug. And plus, everybody else gets to share in your great recipes. I mean, I haven't looked to see if JD2 Chili has put he was going to put the roasted chestnut apple sausage stuffing up on. I haven't checked it yet, but there should be some great recipes up there. I know we've stolen some of the recipes over the years off that and used them, and they are just fantastic. So go out there, enjoy it. It's just fun. We're going to announce the winner on the 20th of December, Wednesday the 20th, which will be our final day of broadcast for the year. I will be on vacation from then on until Tuesday the 2nd or whatever I guess the 2nd or 3rd, whatever that Tuesday is for January. What is that? The 2nd. We'll be back Tuesday the 2nd of January. So 20th will be our final day of broadcast for the year, and we will be hanging out and enjoying it, and it'll be fun. So anyway, that's the housekeeping stuff. We're ready to go and jump into it. Hour 2 this morning, David Haeg is about to join us. He's our guest. He is with the Alaska Grand Jury Association, and they've been talking about judicial corruption. We had David on the program here probably 6 months ago, maybe a little bit more, talking about some of the things that were going on. This all came about when one of the judges down on the Kenai dismissed a grand jury that was starting to look into judicial corruption, which is one of the official duties of the grand jury per the Constitution. And dismissed it and disbanded the jury, which led to some questions. Ben Carpenter came on and talked about it. David Haeg came on and talked a little bit about the history. Since then, there's been some interesting scenarios that including one of the investigator, Judge Murphy, was an investigator for the judicial branch, and there is a hearing coming up about felony perjury, whether or not she actually was. There's a lot of things happening here. Anyway, David talked with us about it here last time. We're going to bring him back on, and we're going to talk about that right now. We're going to bring him on the program to discuss. And we say, good morning, sir. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. And how about yourself?
You know, it's the weekend after the holidays. I'm fat and happy. I guess it was it was a nice break. Didn't look at the news for days. Feel pretty good, and am ready to get into it. But this is a story, and this is a fight that you've been fighting for quite a while. We talked a little bit about that last time you were on, kind of the history of this. But this is all coming about, and we brought you on the program because you're going to be giving a presentation tonight at the Matsu School of Government, right? So tell us what's going to be happening tonight at 7 p.m.
Well, I've been invited to go back there and give an update on what has occurred. And what has happened is, when the former grand jury started investigating, they were all ordered to stop. And there were several of them that were ordered to stop. The last one was disbanded permanently so that they couldn't investigate. And that led to, some protests out in front of the courthouse, legislators getting involved, whatnot. And so another grand jury was convened. That grand jury investigated for over a year and a half now. Back in, I think, it was like 4 or 5 months ago, they indicted one of the former judges that was involved in the evidence of corruption. And just to kind of clear things up a little bit, she was not the one that was like investigating, but part of the evidence against her was given to our judge investigator, a lady named Marla Greenstein, who then apparently, and I'll just say apparently, the evidence indicates that she covered up for this Judge Murphy who was indicted. And so the grand jury is not only looking at judges who may have done something wrong, but looking at the judge investigator when people file a complaint about these judges, about the judge investigator sweeping everything under the rug. And so, as all that kind of started coming out, it was realized that a lot of these things that were crimes, the statute of limitations had probably or maybe run on. But with the judge, when the grand jury subpoenaed the judge, apparently, and I just say apparently, I don't know for sure, apparently she lied under oath to the grand jury, which would be a fresh crime, which would then be indictable. But a lot of the folks that are implicated, it has gone on so long that they may not be able to be prosecuted because of the statute of limitations. So hopefully that it might confuse you a little more, but
right.
The indicted is not the investigator. The investigator is a separate person.
Okay, so this really, again, you've been fighting a fight with your judicial system in Alaska for quite a few years. So we don't necessarily need to go all the way back to the very beginning, but this all came to the head when that grand jury in the Kenai was told not to pursue, and then another grand jury was essentially disbanded, right? That's when the whole thing really came to a head, and it started to get some attention of people outside of your circles. Am I right? Can you fill us in on some backstory on that?
Yeah, that is exactly right. The vast majority of Alaskans that I would, talk to about this early on said, hey, it can't be this bad. There's no way that, we've got judges that are committing crimes and tampering with evidence. And then for you to claim that our judge investigator, the Commission on Judicial Conduct is covering this up, that's just a step too far. That's not possible. But a grand jury, we convinced several grand juries to start investigating. And you are right. Once they started investigating, it was usually judges in the courthouse that would order them to stop. But another person cropped up as jumping in, and that was our Deputy Attorney General, John Skidmore, joined forces with the judges to stop several grand juries from investigating. And I'm just going to quote what our Constitution says. You had said something about, this is something about the Constitution. The Constitution says the power of grand juries to investigate and make recommendations concerning the public welfare or safety shall never be suspended. And so here you have grand juries voting by majority vote to investigate government officials, and those same government officials come in and order the grand jury to stop. That's where it caught some traction. We protested, got some help, and so another grand jury was convened to look into how those former grand juries were stopped, and then to get to the bottom of whether, in fact, there was evidence of corruption in the judicial system. Because it's now, now there's not only evidence of corruption that started the grand jury investigation. Now it's kind of like whether or not our grand juries are unconstitutionally being suppressed. So,
right. That's where that's where I started to raise my eyebrows. Because, we look in many states and in many places, people complain about the system. And, sometimes it's just that. It's just complaining. They didn't get a fair shake, or they felt like they didn't get a fair shake. So somebody starts squabbling. But when you see, a piece of verbiage in the Constitution like that literally says shall not be suspended, shall not be impeded, suspended. I mean, just the grand juries have the ultimate power of keeping track of our government officials, and it should not be suspended. And yet you had judges that were telling grand juries, no, you can't do that. You can't investigate public malfeasance. You can't investigate this issue. And then the attorney general coming in, or the assistant attorney general coming in and saying, we're going to stand with them, and we got to disband this grand jury. I mean, first of all, the hackles on the back of my neck stand up and go, what? Wait a second. That's not, first of all, I don't even think that's within your power to do. Second of all, if you think it is, it seems or appears to be directly in violation of the Constitution of the state of Alaska. And that's when I really started to get interested in what this was all about.
Yeah, well, it gets worse than that, because immediately after the grand jury that was convened to investigate, immediately after they subpoenaed this Judge Murphy and the judge investigator Marla Greenstein, the Alaska Supreme Court came out with a Supreme Court order stripping further, to strip the grand jury of their power to indict and to issue subpoenas and to investigate and make recommendations. And so that happened right in the middle of the grand jury investigation. And what should make the hackle stand up on, the back of people's necks even more, is when the Alaska Supreme Court makes rule changes, there is a sitting 13-member rules committee that is supposed to comment on and actually write the rules, and then the Supreme Court is supposed to pass them. The 5 justices on the Supreme Court pass the rules changes, but this rules committee is supposed to write the rules. And what happened is the Supreme Court wrote the rule change suspending grand jury powers. Some of the rules committee members found out about it, protested, wrote a letter to the Supreme Court saying you cannot do this without a rules committee hearing, weighing in on this. And their exact quote was that this concerns important and serious changes of a constitutional nature, and they wanted a meeting in the rules committee, and the Supreme Court went ahead with the rule change without ever having a rules committee meeting on it. And so, not only is the lower judges stopping the grand juries, but then when a grand jury finally gets their teeth into it and starts investigating, then the Supreme Court steps in, apparently in violation of their own, rules committee rules. So
their own procedures. And we can talk about that here in just a bit. We're going to continue. David Haeg is our guest. We're talking about the grand juries, the power of the grand jury, and what's going on with the Alaska judicial system. I want to backtrack just a bit to talk about that process, because when the Supreme Court stepped in violation of all their process that they normally have, to me, another huge red flag for what's happening. David Haeg, our guest, will continue the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now. David Haeg is our guest. We're gonna continue and pick this up here in a few minutes when we return to the radio, and we'll pick up with that here. I'm just going through here to see if there's any comments on this. How would a person request an investigation into a judge or an assistant district attorney? Asks Michael. And I don't know exactly how that would work. Maybe David can answer that since he's a little more versed in this than I am here. Michael or David, any answer for Mike there?
Well, it's supposed to be as easy as going into the courthouse and asking to make a presentation to the grand jury. I mean, that is as simple as it's supposed to be. And I've had tons of people say it can't be like that. Well, the first grand jury handbooks that were written by the first original Alaska Supreme Court, it specifically lays out in that grand jury handbook that I think the quote is, a citizen is at liberty to apply to the grand jury to make a formal presentation of anything that they want. And so that is how it's supposed to be. But now the Supreme Court with their SCO 1993 says that if a citizen has a concern about a government official, he has to go to the attorney general or an attorney general's designee and give them the information. And then they decide whether it's worthwhile giving to the grand jury. Well, if you're starting to complain about high-level government officials and they're the ones that decide whether it gets given to the grand jury, we may have a problem.
Yeah. The police investigating the police. Is that what you're saying? I mean, that's the kind of thing. I mean, it's the same kind of situation for sure. And it is frustrating, especially if you can go back to those original, like you said, the original documents of the first juror handbook. And this is what it says you should do. Of course, they don't want people peeking under their own skirts. They don't want to see that. Randy asked the question, David, what is the original underlying issue of wrongdoing that the grand jury was trying to investigate? Can you clarify?
It was evidence of the judge investigator, Marla Greenstein. And I guess I'll just lay out kind of what happened. There was a judge in a case that was evidence turned up missing in the case after it had been submitted to the court. And then the judge was being chauffeured and riding around with one of the witnesses in the case. And it happened to be an Alaska State Trooper. And so in the investigation, the judge investigator asked for witnesses to what was going on. And so a list of witnesses was provided. And Marla Greenstein, the judge investigator, exonerated the judge by saying she contacted the witnesses, and I think there were 4 or 5 witnesses, and documented that none of the witnesses had seen anything. And so the judge was exonerated, and she said she contacted all these witnesses. Well, it continued on, and eventually the witnesses, all of them, swore out affidavits that they had never been contacted by Marla Greenstein, and in fact had seen the chauffeuring that was going on. And so then complaints were made to the Bar Association and the Department of Law. So Marla Greenstein then signed a cert backing up what she said, but all of it was refuted by the witnesses themselves in affidavit.
Right. So that was the initial genesis of this whole deal, and that was what was being investigated, and that's what the judge initially basically said at the end, stop investigating this.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. David Haeg is our guest. We're going to continue with this here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, follow, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's get back to it here. More discussions on the grand jury start right now. Okay, we're continuing now our discussions on grand juries. David Haeg with the Alaska Grand Jurors Association is with us. He is going to be giving a presentation to the Matsu School of Government. That's happening tonight over at the Real Life Church on the East Palmer-Wasilla Highway at 7 p.m. tonight. And we've just been talking about kind of the genesis of this whole thing, some impropriety and some actions by the judicial investigator, by one of the judges, which caused other judges to shut down the grand jury. That was kind of the whole genesis of this thing. Then David just mentioned that the Supreme Court got involved, and this was kind of a surprising thing because when you change judicial rules, David, there's a process, and it's a lengthy process. You have a panel on rules, 13 members. They take, input from the public and everything else. It's a long and lengthy process before they turn those over to the Supreme Court, who then votes on them. And in this case, that whole process was completely abrogated. I mean, it was just thrown out of the wall. In fact, the panel, the Judicial Rules Committee, had no input on this at all. So walk me through what exactly happened, when it came out, and what was said.
Well, there's how we found out about it is we found a memorandum here, and it's dated November 22nd, 2022, and it's from Stacy Mars, who's the administrative director, and Nancy Mead, who's the general counsel for the Alaska court system, and it's to all the justices of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice, Mawson, Carney, Borgson, Henderson, and I actually think one of them retired since then, and there's a new justice in there. But basically, it's a memorandum, an internal memorandum of the Alaska Supreme Court, and in it, they talk about how they're making this rule change, but it documents that members of the Rules Committee, one of the members was a Judge Thomas Temple, and they say he had substantive comments as well as punctuation changes. And they say he expressed concern that the rule changes were important and serious changes of a constitutional nature and should not be rushed through. He thought it would be better to discuss the proposal in a committee meeting rather than by email. Then if you go through it, other members basically backed him up, saying that we have to have a rules committee meeting before this is passed. And in the end, the Supreme Court passed the rule changes without a meeting, and they document the reason why they did it even, and they said, finally, the proposed effective date of December 1st, 2022, so the grand jury procedures can be used right away. Well, when there's an ongoing grand jury investigation into corruption by judges, and more importantly, into corruption by our judge investigator, to have the Supreme Court bypass the established oversight of a rules committee to strip power away from a grand jury investigating judges, again, it should make people's hackles stand up.
Absolutely. I mean, it should absolutely make your hackles stand up, especially when the Constitution says that these powers should not be suspended. That's exactly what it says. These powers should not be suspended. We shouldn't have to go to the institution that we're concerned about investigating and ask them to investigate themselves. It is just, I mean, that is totally, totally out of control. Now, you did tell me that you got some new twists in the situation. You're going to kind of update them. Now, not everybody's going to be able to attend the Matsu School of Government tonight. So what are some of these twists that are coming out now that we're seeing? What's where do we stand in the process at this moment right now?
Well, there have been some filings made by the judge that exposed, I think I told folks that a lot of this wrongdoing has been over the course of decades. And so some of the folks may not be able to be prosecuted because of the statute of limitations. But nonetheless, if you remember what the Constitution says, it says the power of grand juries to investigate and make recommendations. And so if what these folks have done, they can't be indicted for because too much time has gone by, the grand jury can make a recommendation. And like with Marla Greenstein, the judge investigator, we'll just pretend that they found something wrong with her. They could recommend that she be fired and someone new put in, because she's been there since 1989 for over 30 years, and she's conducted all 8,000 plus judge investigations. They could do this. Well, these new filings prove that the grand jury actually issued recommendations, a report and recommendations, but nobody has seen it. It's supposed to be public. If you look at what the Supreme Court has done with these rule changes, they wrote in that before a grand jury report can be made public, they get to go in and redact it, go in and remove things, maybe even say that the report shall never be published. Well, doesn't that again directly contradict our Constitution that says the power of grand juries to make recommendations shall never be suspended? We now have evidence that in fact is what the Supreme Court is doing.
Well, interestingly enough, if there have been recommendations in the past to do these things while the statute of limitations did not apply, and now here we sit today, that is some very troubling information. If the recommendations were out there, they could have taken action on them and they didn't. That brings a whole nother element to this situation.
Yeah, you're very perceptive, because some legal minds that are kind of, talk to me every once in a while, some of them are down in the States, some are up here. They have said that if evidence of a crime crops up, but the prosecution of it is corruptly delayed, if people overtly take action that is unethical or illegal to keep that from happening, in fact, it stays the statute of limitations. But when I was, I've been subpoenaed by the grand jury. They've had me in there several times. They believe that the statute of limitations has run. And so a lot of what's going on now may, in fact, be able to be prosecuted, but the grand jury is under the impression, from advice from legal counsel, that they can't. So, in essence, you're on the right track, but wouldn't it be nice to at least see the recommendation, what they found and,
right. Yeah, no, exactly. And then my other question is, with those recommendations, again, it couldn't just be like you could be fired and things like that. Since we're dealing with judges and justices and things like that, I mean, we could talk about recommendations for disbarment. I mean, there's a serious, there's some serious implications here, which may be one of the reasons why this stuff they continue to try and sweep it under the rug, because it erodes that power base.
Yeah. And again, a lot of folks have a hard time wrapping their head around the magnitude of this. Again, I'm just going to point out that Alaska has one judge investigator, only one. She gets every complaint against every judge in the whole state. And she's been in that position since 1989. And the criminal complaints and the bar complaints and the complaints against this person started in 2010. It's now 2023. If in fact she's dirty, and has been covering up for judges, and again, the commission gets about 20 complaints a month. You do the math, it's well over 8,000 complaints, after 30 years. What if we'll just pretend that 1% of the complaints she gets, she covers up. 1% of 8,000 judges is 80 judges. How many cases, if there are 80 corrupt judges in our courts right now, and that's just 1% of the judges that she's investigated, how much damage could 80 judges do in their career to Alaskan families? Just think about that. That's just 1%.
It's and of course I don't think there's been 8,000 judges, but I mean it's each one could be. I mean some of these judges could have multiple complaints against them, right? I mean, but 80 different cases. If you had 80 cases that were manipulated in some way, just 1%. I mean, it's just 1%, not 5 or 10 or 15. 1%. 80 cases being manipulated. That is. I mean, that's terrifying because, again, all the power is at this point in that judicial system. You as an individual, you as a citizen trying to fight against that. I mean, that's a David and Goliath situation.
Yeah. And 80 cases, that's a case against a judge. If that judge is not removed from that position, they continue to sit there for their whole career. And so there's hundreds. Each one of those cases affects hundreds, if not thousands of cases that appear before that judge. And that's what I'm saying is, and then you realize why the verbiage is in our Constitution that affects the public welfare and safety. Well, if in fact this is going on, it is a massive concern to the public welfare and safety. And again, and I've had people say, oh, when the founding fathers wrote that, they didn't mean for government officials to be, included in that. And that, that must be, just for, private citizens where the grand jury investigates. I'm going to read some quotes from the 55 delegates that they made back in 1955. Here's some quotes, exact quotes from the delegates. The power of grand juries to inquire into the willful misconduct in office of public officers and to find indictments in connection therewith shall never be suspended. That was December 15th, 1955, they said that. Here's another quote. The grand jury is preserved for all purposes, particularly for investigation of public officials. So all these folks that have contacted me and said, hey, the grand jury is not supposed to investigate public officials. Well, guess what? The delegates said that's their most important duty, is to investigate government officials. And so now we're in this situation of government officials trying to stop the grand jury from investigating government officials. Well, it's almost as if the people who wrote our Constitution had a crystal ball and knew we would get into this situation at some point and gave us these words to guide us. It makes me pretty proud of people, I guess, that wrote our Constitution. They foresaw this day.
Well, there needs to be transparency, right? There needs to be a watchdog on the government. They have so much power in our lives. There needs to be some kind of mechanism, which again, it seems like, according to what we're seeing now, what you're talking about, that is being impeded by the same system that's under investigation, which is obviously a very self-serving situation and needs to be addressed. We're going to get into where it is now and where it's going from here. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment with David Haeg from the Alaska Grand Jurors Association. The Michael Duke Show continues in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Back with more right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
David Haeg is our guest. Let me see if there's any other questions. Ask Mr. Haeg who the disciplinary body is for judges. Who is the disciplinary body for the judges? Is that the Bar Association or is it something separate, David?
It's a separate entity. It's called the Alaska Commission on Judicial Corruption, and it's made up of 9 members, and they meet, I think, twice or maybe like 4 times a year, and they're basically supposed to oversee Marla Greenstein, who's the executive director, and she's their investigator. And so it's the Alaska Commission on Judicial.
The Alaska Commission on Judicial Conduct. Okay. And that's part of the reason, that's part of what they're pulling in here to say these guys have not been overseeing, or she's been snowing them the whole time, kind of thing.
Well, I would beg to differ, because there's another thing that should make your hackles stand up with that entity, but I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you want to go here, but there is something that is horribly disturbing about what happened with that commission also.
Well, feel free to enlighten us while you're here.
Okay. Well, when Marla did what she did, I actually contacted the witnesses who, swore out affidavits impugning what Marla had said to exonerate judges. And so we looked into this commission and we wanted to speak to it. Well, we found that the rules say that when they meet, they encourage public testimony on anything concerning the commission. And so you had to apply apply 48 hours in advance. So I got all the witnesses to agree to go to this meeting of the commission, and we applied like a week ahead of time. Well, the chairman at the time was a judge named Judge Ben Esch. He wrote back and he said, denied. We will not allow you to testify to the commission. Well, when, and they'd asked us what we wanted to testify to, and all the witnesses said, hey, we're going to testify that your investigator falsified our testimony and falsified contacting us. And so isn't that a little disturbing that their bylaws say they encourage public testimony, but when you want to exercise it, they deny you?
Oh, man, who's watching the watchers at this point? That's the question. Who's watching the watchers? And apparently they have all the power at that point. Brian had asked, who is the Alaska School of Government? And Terry responded with, the School of Government was started by Edna Bell Armstrong DeVries. It's to educate the way our government works or doesn't. They have very interesting speakers, keeps the people informed on local, state, and political issues. She said she goes to it and learns so much. I hardly encourage everyone to attend. They've had some very interesting guests over the last year or so there. And again, just another way to look behind the curtain, so to speak, on what's happening. Politidic says he's probably going to be streaming that tonight, depending on what happens at the Palmer City Council meeting tonight. But he said he is probably going to be streaming the School of Government stuff tonight, which I think is very good. What would David, let me say, Mike says, would David think that there should be an investigation on a judge in an ADA if a 3-time convicted felon with over 40 felonies combined, released on probation? Should the judge be investigated? If he was, this is the issue of the guy who was bamboozling people with 40 felonies lined up on this, but he was released on probation. Should that be investigated? I don't know. Should it be investigated, David? That's what's your opinion on that? Just hearing on, what you're seeing there.
I, enough information to make a judgment on that. It sounds suspicious to me, but, with a lot of this stuff, you know, the way it's supposed to be is whoever has concerns with it should be able to go to before a grand jury and apply for permission to make a formal presentation. I think that's the exact verbiage that was in the original grand jury handbook. And so, you know, with a lot of this stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean the grand jury has to investigate. I mean, you understand that if you or I go to a grand jury and say, hey, this sounds weird, we want it investigated, grand jury must investigate. They get to decide what they investigate.
Right. But it can be brought up in front of them. They are the ones, they're the arbiters, supposedly a jury of our peers. They're the ones that are the arbiters of whether or not it should be investigated. We may think it's, you know, it's due, but they get to decide on that, which again is part of the process. But when it's been completely suspended and abrogated, like we talked about here, that's when it's throwing the whole thing into disarray. All right, we're going to jump back into it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's go. Okay, one final segment for today. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking with Brad Keithley and Chris Story. Getting ready to do our thing here then. And then later this week, we're going to, again, start to try and break into more non-political stuff for the month of December, the end of November, beginning of December. Meanwhile, David Haeg is our guest with the Alaska Grand Jurors Association. Been talking about the different things. He's going to be at the Alaska School of Government tonight at 7 p.m. That is in Palmer, on the Palmer-Wasilla Highway at the Real Life Church at 7 p.m. The School of Government is just kind of a organization that was put together by Edna DeVries to educate people on how their government works and what doesn't. And she's had some very interesting guests tonight. David is going to lay out all the details on this. David, where do we sit on this right now? Where is this? You know, what part of this are we at? We've had the grand jury been denied, then we had it disbanded. We had the Supreme Court make the ruling that they could no longer investigate that stuff, that it had to go through the Attorney General and yada yada yada. So where are we at right now with this process? Where are we sitting?
Well, there has been a grand jury convened. It's been investigating now for, I believe, over a year and a half. It has indicted one former judge on felony charges of perjury. And I think it was perjury to the grand jury because the grand jury subpoenaed the judge. And I can only assume that it's over what the judge said to the grand jury. But that judge's court filings have also brought to light that the grand jury wrote a report with recommendations that no one has seen. And when a grand jury writes recommendations, it's supposed to be automatically public. But what has happened, apparently, is the Supreme Court, with their rule change, says that judges get to go in and decide what gets released from a grand jury recommendation. And so that's kind of where we sit, is the grand jury, I believe, is still impaneled. It has indicted one former judge. It has wrote a recommendation and issued it, but nobody's seen it because the Supreme Court has issued rules that allow them to suspend that. And again, you know, our Constitution says that the power of grand juries to make recommendations shall never be suspended. And I don't know what it means when they make recommendations and the Supreme Court goes in and grabs it and keeps the public from seeing it. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. And we're trying to alert the public as to what's going on, have them contact their legislators. It would be nice to have like a a legislative investigation into what's going on, or maybe even, one that the governor starts an executive investigation, but have it done in public, not behind closed doors. Have it done
Right.
like the Iran-Contra affair. I mean, I think you're old enough to remember that. I watched that very closely. And when they had, Oliver North, Colonel Oliver North come in and he says, I exercise my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Right there, that's all I needed to see to know government had gone off the rails. And so, with this, we need to just get people aware and ask for a public investigation or a public accounting. And we need to demand that we see the unredacted report and recommendations from the grand jury.
Right. So, well, and the problem here is that this is not even something, I don't think you can even elevate this to federal court, right? Because this is a state issue. Could this even be elevated to, the Supreme Court or something like that? Or is this strictly a state issue that we have to work out here in the state?
Because it's based on the state constitution, it basically is going to have to be worked out within the state. But there are things now happening that start making it almost seem like it's a racket, or that, if they go too far, if these agencies and judges go too far, it will eventually become a federal crime. But at this point, we can't. Violations of state constitutions do not mean you get to go to, the federal government will not enforce state constitutions.
Right.
All this stuff under the grand jury is all laid out in our state constitution. So, right now I think we're stuck with working within the state, but that doesn't mean to say that at some point there wouldn't be a federal case to be made.
So the cases right now, obviously we need to be encouraging our legislators. And I know, like I said, Ben Carpenter had taken an interest in this. We could bring some other legislators to the fray as well to try and bring some scrutiny on this. But there is also still the court case. I know Judge Murphy's case is continuing, and it's actually going to be taking place next year, right? January. Is that, am I right with that? Give me what's happening with that case. What's happened so far and where it's going.
Was arraigned, and there was some other hearings. The next hearing, which is going to be oral arguments on motions, is January 8th, and it's in Homer at the Homer Courthouse. I believe it's at 10 a.m. And every time so far, the courtroom has been packed, but it is important that everybody keep attending. And the reason is that the judge that's presiding is the district. Basically all the judges on the entire Kenai Peninsula disqualified them from the case. And Judge Thomas, I think it's Matthews, who's the presiding judge of the 3rd District, which is Anchorage, the Mat-Su and the Kenai Peninsula, he assigned himself to the case. And when he showed up, he keeps commenting on how the public is watching this case. And I think because of what's happened in the past, it is important that the public continue watching. And so January 8th at 10 a.m. is oral arguments in some of the motions that have been filed. I think Judge Murphy's team filed a motion to dismiss. I think there's some other things outstanding. I believe they had said that her actual trial would start a month or two after that. So her actual trial won't begin until maybe March, but there's a hearing on January 8th that I would encourage people to attend.
This is a motion hearing for them to decide whether or not they're going to obviously put in a motion to dismiss. But again, if the public is there watching, it basically incentivizes whoever's in charge, in this case, this judge you're talking about, to make sure they take this seriously and just don't out of hand dismiss it and say, pay no attention here to the man behind the curtain. This is an opportunity, but we've got to participate.
Yeah. And I know we all have our lives, and I've got a beautiful wife and daughters and many, many other things that I would rather be doing than this. But the more I look at this, the more it flat scares the hell out of me, because if we don't do something now, what is going to happen in another 70 years? It's been 70 years since Alaska was made a state and a constitution was written. Look at where we're at now. If we don't hold the line and say no now, and we give them another 70 years to get the bit in their teeth, there may be no coming back from that. And so, right. That's, kind of why I helped start this organization. In California, they did much the same thing. In California, they rewrote their grand jury handbooks. Their Grand Jurors Association goes into the schools, into the high schools, and makes presentations. They print materials and disseminate them. And so, one thing I'd ask people to do is to join this Grand Jurors Association to just get back to what we had at the beginning. A grand jury handbook that explains exactly what your rights are as a grand juror. And I'll have you know, the current grand jury handbook was modified to remove all of that verbiage. And that's scary, because the Alaska Supreme Court and the court system write that grand jury handbook, and they have systematically removed all of the pertinent stuff out of it.
Right. Redacted the information that may be damaging to them in the future. Again, who's watching the Watchmen at this point and keeping track of it? Where do folks go out to find more about the Alaska Grand Jury Association?
We've got a website called alaskagrandjurorsassociation.org. And then a lot of the actual evidence, like the Supreme Court internal memorandum, SCO 1993, a lot of that is on another website called alaskastateofcorruption.com. So there's two websites. One, alaskagrandjurorsassociation.org, and then alaskastateofcorruption.com. And again, any help, spread the word, attend some of these things. That's basically, I believe that it's going to take broad for this problem gets solved.
It's going to take broad what, David? You broke up.
Broad public awareness.
Okay. Broad public awareness. AlaskaGrandJurorsAssociation.org. I'll copy the link and post it in the chat room. David Haeg, thank you so much for coming on board. We appreciate it. Folks, we're out of time. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Okay, David, final thoughts here. I'll give you the final bite at the apple. Anything we missed or anything we should have touched on? Otherwise, you'll be there tonight, 7 p.m. at the church in Palmer there at the Real Life Church. Your final thoughts here.
Well, yeah, it's been great. One thing that I never really hit upon is the delegates to the that wrote the Constitution. They said one of the most invaluable rights a citizen has is to appeal to the grand jury directly. I mean, that is a quote from the delegates. And the Alaska Supreme Court said in their order 1993 that citizens never have had and do not have the right to appeal directly to the grand jury. And so not only are they suppressing grand juries once they get going, they're eliminating our ability to go to them directly, which was laid out in the grand jury handbook and stuff. And so, I kind of like to look at it like two separate problems. We're supposed to be able to go make our pitch to the grand jury, and then a separate thing, the grand jury is supposed to be able to do what they want. And the Supreme Court is attacking both of those.
It's yeah, this is a terrifying thing. If there's been a systemic removal of information by the Supreme Court and other judicial services, a rewriting of the handbook, taking away people's knowledge of what they have as the ability with the grand jury. I mean, the grand jury is one of the most powerful public tools in the country when it comes to rooting out government corruption. It was what was intended. And if they're slowly neutering that, it's a real problem. All right. Thank you so much, David. It's good to talk with you. Thank you for coming on board and joining us. Keep us in the loop if anything else changes. We appreciate you being part of it today.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for having me on.
You bet. I appreciate it. Folks, we're out of time for today. The Michael Duke Show continues. We got more tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Mm-hmm.